A goalie stands alone, with every mistake made public and every failure replayed. But the hardest battles don't happen in the crease. They happen in silence, behind the mask, when no one is watching. Robin Lehner admitted something almost unheard of in professional sports. The battle wasn't on the ice, it was inside him. He called it the monster.
At least that's been my perception of it, and when you watch TV and stuff like that, it's
a darkness inside him that he battled his entire life.
Oh, did you see that? Save the game and maybe out the playoffs for Robin Lehner of Brock Besser.
To the world, he was a star NHL goalie, a fiery competitor. But in private, the monster was winning.
Being diagnosed bipolar was tough. Serious illness, but it's very easily treated. It's just hard to recognize what you have. And when I got the diagnosis, a lot of things clicked. It was like a piece of the puzzle that came in. I could all of a sudden see the pattern. I could see how it has affected me, and everything I've done, I take full responsibility for. I should have gotten help earlier. Things that I've been through and done myself. And the person I've been, it's nothing but me.
This is the raw story of Robert Lehner's fight against his own mind and his incredible journey back from the edge.
The Masterton Trophy goes to, let's see, Robin Lehner!
In 2019, Robin Lehner stood on a stage in Las Vegas and accepted the Bill Masterton Trophy, the NHL's award for perseverance. He was a finalist for the Vezina Trophy as the league's best goaltender, a celebrated hero whose comeback story had inspired the entire hockey world. Just 1 year earlier, he was standing on a street corner in Buffalo, drunk, alone, and screaming into his phone for help, his life and career completely falling apart. This is the story of that fall and the incredible climb that followed. The story begins in Gothenburg, Sweden, where Robin Lehner grew up immersed in the world of hockey. His father, Michael, was a coach, and from a young age, Robin showed immense talent in the net. He was big, athletic, and possessed a fiery, competitive nature that scouts loved. But even as a child, he was fighting a battle that no one could see. He has since described feeling different, battling what he would later call a darkness or the monster inside him. He would have fits of rage and extreme mood swings, signs of an undiagnosed mental illness that would follow him his entire life. On the ice, this internal turmoil was often mistaken for simple competitiveness. He was a top prospect, and in 2009, the Ottawa Senators drafted him in the second round. He came to North America and immediately dominated. In his first full professional season as a 19-year-old in the AHL, he led the Binghamton Senators to a Calder Cup championship, being named the playoff MVP. He was seen as the future of the Ottawa franchise, a can't-miss prospect. After a few years of showing flashes of brilliance in Ottawa, he was traded to the Buffalo Sabres in 2015. This was his big chance, his first opportunity to be a true number one starting goaltender in the NHL. The pressure was immense, and it was in Buffalo that the monster he had been fighting his entire life finally began to take over. His time in Buffalo from 2015 to 2018 was the darkest period of his life. The pressure of being a starting goalie, combined with his untreated mental illness, led him to self-medicate heavily. He fell into a vicious cycle of drinking a case of beer a day and taking a dangerous amount of sleeping pills just to quiet the noise in his head. He was living a secret life, consumed by manic highs and deep, dark depressions. His thoughts turned dark, and he began to seriously contemplate ending his own life. He was a man in a deep, private crisis. But that crisis was about to become terrifyingly public. The date was March 29, 2018. The Sabres were playing a home game against the Detroit Red Wings. During the second period, with the puck at the other end of the ice, Robin Lehner was suddenly overwhelmed by a severe panic attack. In his own words, he felt an intense pressure on his chest. He thought he was having a heart attack. He couldn't breathe. The world was closing in on him. During a TV timeout, he frantically skated to the bench, told the trainers he was done, and abruptly left the game and the arena. This was his public rock bottom, the moment the mask he had been wearing for years finally shattered for the world to see. He had nowhere left to hide. The monster was out. The world had now seen the breakdown on the ice. But what they didn't see was the terrifying aftermath, a desperate, alcohol-fueled cry for help that would either end his life or save it. The hours after Robin Lehner left that game in Buffalo were a blur of alcohol and desperation. He had reached the end of his rope. The secret battle he had been fighting in the dark his entire life had finally exploded into the light, and he felt he had nowhere left to turn. The dark thoughts he had been battling for years came rushing back, louder and more powerful than ever before. In his own words, he was sitting at home, drunk, contemplating the end. The monster was about to win. But in that moment of absolute darkness, standing on a street corner, drunk and terrified, he made the single most important decision of his life. He picked up his phone. He called his goalie coach, Mike Bales, and for the first time, he was completely honest. He screamed, he cried, and he admitted that he was not okay, that he was in crisis, and that he desperately needed help. That one phone call saved his life. The call set a chain of events in motion. The NHL and NHL Players Association Joint Player Assistance Program was immediately contacted. Lehner was flown to a rehab and detox facility in Arizona, the Meadows. The process was brutal. He spent weeks detoxing from a dangerous combination of alcohol and sleeping pills, a period he has described as pure hell. But for the first time, he was surrounded by doctors and therapists who could finally give him the answers he had been searching for his entire life. During his 5 weeks in treatment, he underwent a series of intensive psychiatric evaluations. And for the first time, the monster that had haunted him since childhood was given a name. He was officially diagnosed with bipolar I disorder with manic phases, post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, and ADHD. The diagnosis was a life-altering revelation. It wasn't an excuse for his behavior, it was an explanation. The fits of rage, the deep depressions, the manic energy that made him feel on top of the world one day and in a dark hole the next, it all finally made sense. Bipolar I specifically is characterized by these severe manic episodes, which were the source of so much of his erratic behavior.
Richard Panik who came in there. Lehner loses his headgear, he throws the blocker down. Koharski restraining him, and here comes Rico Helenius.
Here comes Helenius. We're going to have a goalie fight. A good old goalie fight. Here we go, Grady. Uh-oh. Here they're squaring off at the blue line. Lehner and Helenius are throwing bombs here. Oh, look at this.
What an uppercut.
Oh, Lehner with a tremendous right hands. And down goes Helenius. Cowabunga. The fans are on their feet here.
Some old-time hockey, and what were you and I talking about this morning, Shrive? Some of those old arenas where Slapshot was filmed, it feels like Saturday night back.
For the first time, he had a roadmap, a way to understand and manage his condition with medication and therapy, not just self-medicate it with alcohol. He wasn't a bad person. He was a person with an illness. And now, he could finally begin to heal. But his professional future was a complete unknown. That summer of 2018, he was a free agent. He was now a 27-year-old goalie with a public history of addiction and a serious mental health diagnosis. In the conservative old-school world of the NHL, most teams thought he was too risky. The phone wasn't ringing. His career was hanging by a thread. But one team, the New York Islanders, who had just lost their own superstar captain and were in a state of disarray, was willing to take a chance. They offered him a one-year, $1.5 million prove-it deal. This was the last chance to save his career. Before the season even began, Lehner made another courageous decision. He decided he was done hiding. On September 13th, 2018, he published a raw, unflinching, and deeply personal essay in The Athletic titled, "I'm Not Ashamed." In it, he told the world everything. His diagnosis, his battle with addiction, his dark thoughts, the panic attack on the ice. He took control of his own narrative, laying his soul bare for the world to see. He wrote, "The monster is not gone, but I know it's there now. The monster has a name. Bipolar. He went on to say, "I am what I am, a guy who is trying every day to be a better person, a guy that is trying to get up and be a good dad. That is all that matters." The article was a landmark moment of honesty and vulnerability from an active professional athlete. It went viral, and the reaction from the hockey world and the public was overwhelmingly positive and supportive. He had taken his greatest weakness and turned it into his greatest strength. He was sober, he had a diagnosis, he had a new team, and he had bravely shared his truth with the world. The long, difficult climb back to the top was just the beginning. He had bravely shared his story, but the hockey world was still watching with skepticism. Now, the man who had conquered his demons off the ice had to prove he could still conquer the game on it. When Robin Lehner signed with the New York Islanders in the summer of 2018, he was joining a team that was in complete disarray. Their superstar captain, John Tavares, had just abandoned them in free agency to sign with the rival Toronto Maple Leafs. The franchise was a laughingstock, a team universally predicted by every expert to be one of the worst, if not the worst, in the entire National Hockey League. They were seen as a collection of underdogs and cast-offs, and their new reclamation project goaltender with the history of addiction and mental illness was the poster child for their low expectations. But something incredible happened on that island. The team, led by their brilliant new coach Barry Trotz and backstopped by their new goaltending tandem of Lehner and Thomas Greiss, came together to create one of the most surprising and inspiring seasons in recent memory. And at the heart of it all was Robin Lehner. From the very beginning of the season, he was a different player. The chaotic, fiery goalie was gone. In his place was a calm, focused, and technically brilliant netminder. Sober, and with his mental health finally being properly managed, he was able to fully unlock the world-class talent he had always possessed. He played with a joy and a passion that was infectious. The Islanders fan base, a famously passionate and loyal group, immediately embraced him. They knew his story. They had read his article. They saw a man who was fighting for his life and his career, and they wrapped their arms around him. The chants of "Robin, Robin" that would rain down from the stands of the old Nassau Coliseum became the soundtrack of his redemption. He fed off their energy, and they fed off his incredible performance. And his performance was truly incredible. He had the best season of his career, posting a spectacular .930 save percentage and a 2.13 goals against average. These were not just good numbers. They were elite Vezina caliber numbers that placed him among the very best goalies in the world. He was the backbone of a defensive system that shocked the league. By the end of the season, the team that was supposed to be a joke had shattered all expectations. Lehner and his partner Thomas Greiss combined to allow the fewest goals in the entire league, winning the William M. Jennings Trophy. More importantly, he led the Islanders on an improbable run to the Stanley Cup playoffs. In the first round, they were matched up against the Pittsburgh Penguins, a team led by the legendary Sidney Crosby. The Islanders weren't just underdogs, they were given no chance. But with Lehner playing some of the best hockey of his life, they didn't just win. They dominated, sweeping the Penguins in 4 straight games. The on-ice comeback was complete. Quick timeout. This channel is for the fans who want the real story. If that's you, become an official member of the Skates and Scars crew. That join button below is the best way to support everything we do here. The playoff victory was the ultimate on-ice validation for his incredible comeback. But his most powerful moment was still to come, not in a hockey rink, but on a stage in Las Vegas. The 2019 NHL Awards in Las Vegas were supposed to be a celebration of the league's biggest stars. But that night, the biggest star was the man who wasn't supposed to be there at all. Robin Lehner's incredible season with the New York Islanders had earned him 2 major award nominations, a feat that was unthinkable just 1 year earlier. His first nomination was for the Vezina Trophy as the league's best goaltender. He was a finalist alongside Andrei Vasilevsky and Ben Bishop, the undisputed best goalies in the world. For Lehner, a player who was an unsigned free agent just months before, simply being named a finalist was a monumental victory. It was a sign that he was once again considered one of the elite players at his position. But it was the second award that truly mattered. He was the frontrunner for the Bill Masterson Memorial Trophy, the award given annually to the player who best exemplifies the qualities of perseverance, sportsmanship, and dedication to hockey. It's the league's highest honor for character, an award for the player who has overcome the most.
Robin Lehner!
When his name was called as the winner, it was the official and emotional culmination of his impossible journey back from the brink. He walked onto the stage to a massive standing ovation. And in a sport known for its cliches and quiet humility, he delivered one of the most powerful, raw, and honest acceptance speeches in the history of sports. He didn't just thank his coaches and teammates. He spoke directly to the people who were still fighting the same battle he was. He said,
"You know, I'm not ashamed to say I'm mentally ill, but that doesn't mean mentally weak."
That single sentence sent a shockwave through the hockey world. The honesty was stunning. He went on to thank the doctors who had saved him, the Islanders organization that had given him a chance, and his family. In the most emotional moment of the speech, he looked directly at his wife Donna and said,
"My fantastic wife, who got to stick this out with me, you're amazing." Yeah.
He ended his speech with a powerful message of hope, encouraging anyone who was struggling to reach out and talk, to not be ashamed, famously declaring, "It's okay to not be okay." The speech was a landmark moment for mental health in professional sports, a courageous act of vulnerability that has inspired countless people. He had reached the peak of his redemption. But, as he would later show the world, the journey of recovery is not a straight line. The hero's journey is not a fairy tale. It's a series of battles, and sometimes you stumble. After leaving the Islanders, he continued his successful career, eventually signing a massive 5-year contract with the Vegas Golden Knights. But the monster he had named was still there. After being diagnosed with bipolar disorder and battling addiction, Lehner took a courageous step few athletes ever do. He entered treatment, got sober, and spoke publicly about his struggles. When he returned to the NHL, he didn't just play. He dominated, posting career-best numbers and earning a Vezina Trophy finalist nod. But what made Lehner's comeback truly powerful wasn't only his performance, it was his transparency. He spoke openly about depression, anxiety, and substance abuse, shattering the silence that surrounds mental health in professional sports. His emotional Masterson Trophy acceptance speech, where he declared, "I'm not ashamed to say I'm mentally ill, but that doesn't mean I'm mentally weak," became a defining moment for the entire league. This is the foundation of Robin Lehner's new legacy. He has become one of the most important and outspoken advocates for mental health in the sports world. He is a prominent ambassador for the #SameHere global mental health movement, which aims to normalize the conversation around mental illness. He has used his social media platform to have frank and sometimes confrontational conversations about the pressures athletes face, and has been a sharp critic of the league's medical practices, particularly regarding the distribution of prescription pills to players. His legacy has been completely transformed. He's no longer just a fiery, talented goalie. He's a leader, a trailblazer who has used his own immense pain to light a path for others. His story is a powerful testament to the idea that true strength isn't about never falling down. It's about having the courage to get back up over and over again. Not every struggle looks the same. Some goalies don't implode, they endure. Carey Price became calm in a city built on pressure. And eventually, that calm gave way. To the world, he was the highest paid goalie in the NHL.
We're going to make sure he's finished as a Montreal Canadian, and to me, that's a big thing.
Montreal's unbreakable savior. But in private, he was an addict, self-medicating to survive the immense pressure.
Being able to just reset my mind and create some accountability for myself has really been a life changer.
This is the raw story of Carey Price's battle against his demons and his courageous fight for redemption.
I just felt like it came to a point in my life where I really needed to stop.
In June of 2022, Carey Price stood on the stage at the NHL Awards and accepted the Bill Masterson Memorial Trophy, the league's award for perseverance and dedication. It was a moment met with thunderous applause, a recognition of his courageous comeback from a battle few even knew he was fighting. Just 8 months earlier, the man revered as the cornerstone of the franchise, the stoic, unflappable backbone of the Montreal Canadiens, had voluntarily entered the NHL's player assistance program, revealing a hidden struggle that had brought one of the game's biggest stars to his knees.
For a lot of NHL players, I think that's probably the hardest first step. It's probably the hardest first step, I think, for most people that are struggling.
Carey Price's story starts in Anaheim Lake, British Columbia, a remote indigenous community nestled deep in the province's rugged interior. It's a place defined by its isolation, a small Okacho First Nation reserve accessible mainly by small aircraft or a long, difficult drive over partially unpaved roads. This was the world that shaped Carey Price. His mother, Linda Price, served as the chief of the Okacho First Nation, instilling in him a deep connection to his Nuksak and Southern Carrier heritage, roots he remains incredibly proud of.
My mom's watching at home. She was just re-elected as chief, and I'm very proud of her as well. Dahuja Okacho.
His father, Jerry Price, was a former goaltender himself, drafted by the Philadelphia Flyers, but never making the NHL. Jerry became Carey's first and most important coach. In the harsh environments of Anaheim Lake, finding ice time wasn't easy. Jerry built backyard rinks, teaching his son fundamentals under the vast, cold skies of central BC. But organized hockey required a level of dedication that bordered on the extreme. Jerry, who owned and flew a small Piper Super Cub plane, would regularly fly his young son over 300 miles each way, a 5-hour drive through wilderness, just to get him to practices and games in the town of Williams Lake. This wasn't just a commute. It was a weekly pilgrimage, a father and son bound by a shared dream and the hum of a tiny plane engine cutting through the remote silence. This incredible sacrifice, this unwavering belief from his father, laid the foundation for the quiet determination that would define Carey's career. From those early days, his talent was undeniable. He possessed a natural calmness in the net, an almost extraordinary ability to stay composed under pressure. To pursue his dream, he had to leave the isolation of Anaheim Lake behind.
Anaheim Lake is, first and foremost, pretty remote.
At age 15, he moved away from his family and community to play AAA hockey, eventually landing with the Tri-City Americans in the Western Hockey League. It was there that he blossomed into the top goaltending prospect in the world, known for his calm demeanor, his flawless technique, and his imposing size.
I feel really fortunate that there's the walkout. I know Ole doesn't feel the same way, but having a guy like him come in helps me a lot.
This led him to the 2005 NHL Draft, a legendary draft class headlined by Sidney Crosby. While Crosby was the undisputed #1 pick, Carey Price was considered a generational talent in his own right. The Montreal Canadiens, a franchise with a legendary history of goaltending icons like Jacques Plante and Ken Dryden, shocked many by using the 5th overall pick to select him.
The Montreal Canadiens are proud to select from the WHL Tri-City Americans goaltender Carey Price.
Being picked that high as a goalie is rare. Being picked that high by Montreal? The pressure was immediate and immense. He was instantly anointed as the savior, the next in line to carry the torch for hockey's most scrutinized franchise. Before he even stepped onto the NHL ice, he added to the hype. In 2007, he led Montreal's AHL affiliate, the Hamilton Bulldogs, on an improbable run to the Calder Cup Championship, winning the playoff MVP award. The performance proved he was ready. He bypassed any further minor league development and made the jump directly to the NHL for the 2007-08 season. He didn't just make the team. He took the starting job, earning all rookie honors and immediately becoming the new face of the franchise. For over a decade, Carey Price wasn't just a goalie for the Montreal Canadiens. He was the Montreal Canadiens. In a city that treats its hockey team like a religion, he became a god, revered by the passionate fan base as their savior. He was known for his incredible consistency, his quiet leadership, and his almost inhuman ability to remain calm under the most intense pressure. He carried the weight of the franchise on his shoulders year after year, often single-handedly keeping mediocre teams competitive. His peak came in the 2014-15 season, a year of almost unbelievable dominance. He led the league in wins, goals against average, and save percentage. He became only the second goalie in the modern era to sweep the major NHL awards, winning the Vezina Trophy as the best goalie, the Ted Lindsay Award as the most outstanding player voted by his peers, and the Hart Trophy as the league's most valuable player.
I'm very honored to receive this. It's very special to me because it is voted by the guys that you compete and battle against all season long. And to receive this, I'm very, very, very honored.
It was one of the greatest single seasons by a goaltender in the history of the sport. He was, undeniably, the best goalie on the planet. He cemented his legendary status on the international stage, backstopping Team Canada to Olympic gold in 2014 with a near-perfect performance in Sochi. He signed a massive 8-year, $84 million contract extension in 2017, the richest goalie contract in NHL history at the time. He had reached the absolute pinnacle of his profession. But the expectation of being Montreal's savior year after year was beginning to take its toll, and beneath the calm exterior, a hidden battle was brewing. He had reached the absolute summit of the hockey world, the undisputed king. But wearing the crown in Montreal comes at a cost, a physical and mental toll that was slowly beginning to tear him down. Being the starting goaltender for the Montreal Canadiens is unlike any other job in professional sports. It's not just a position, it's a legacy, a cultural touchstone. The ghosts of legends like Jacques Plante, Ken Dryden, and Patrick Roy loom large, casting a shadow over anyone who dares to step into that crease. The pressure is suffocating, amplified by a relentless media corps that scrutinizes every goal, every save, every word. The expectations of the passionate, knowledgeable, and often demanding fan base are astronomical. For over a decade, Carey Price didn't just handle that pressure, he seemed immune to it. His calm, almost zen-like demeanor in the net became his trademark. He was the unflappable backbone of the franchise, the quiet leader, the one constant the team could always rely on, earning him hero status with the fans. But carrying that immense weight year after year takes a hidden toll. After his historic quadruple award-winning MVP season in 2014-15, the cracks began to show, not necessarily in his elite performance on the ice, but in his body. The relentless physical grind of being a workhorse goalie, playing upwards of 60 to 70 games a season under the intense pressure of the Montreal market, started to break him down. He began battling a series of significant injuries, primarily to his groin, hips, and knees, the areas most susceptible to wear and tear for a goaltender perfecting the demanding butterfly style. These weren't just minor bumps and bruises that could be easily managed. They were significant injuries that required difficult, lengthy rehabilitation periods and often forced him to make a choice: sit out and let his team down, or push through considerable pain for the sake of the crest on his jersey. The pressure to stay on the ice, to be the savior the team and the city needed him to be, was immense. Like so many players brought up in the hockey's warrior culture, he learned to push through the pain. He relied on injections, treatments, and his own incredible mental fortitude to maintain his elite level of play, even when his body was screaming at him to stop. He remained one of the best goalies in the world for several more seasons, a perennial Vezina candidate. He continued to rack up wins and accolades, solidifying his place among the greats. But the injuries were becoming more frequent, the time missed longer, the recoveries harder. The quiet warrior, known for his stoicism, was engaged in a constant grinding battle, not just against opposing shooters, but against his own breaking body. And beneath the surface, hidden from the cameras and the crowds, another hidden battle was brewing. The intense, unrelenting pressure of his position, the chronic physical pain from the mounting injuries, and perhaps the unresolved weight of his unique, isolated upbringing in Anaheim Lake began to create a perfect storm internally. As he would later courageously reveal, he started to neglect his own mental health. In the hyper-masculine world of professional hockey, talking about stress, anxiety, or the emotional toll of carrying a franchise was often seen as a sign of weakness. So he internalized it. He hid his struggles behind the same stoic, impenetrable mask he wore on the ice. And, like many who struggle in silence, he began to turn to substances as a way to cope, a dangerous path of self-medication to numb both the physical aches and the invisible emotional wounds. He was still performing at an elite level, but the foundation was crumbling. This hidden battle, this slow descent, reached its climax during the improbable and magical 2021 Stanley Cup playoffs. The Canadiens, who had barely squeaked into the playoffs as the lowest-seeded team, went on an unexpected Cinderella run all the way to the Stanley Cup final. And the undisputed hero, the primary reason for that incredible journey, was Carey Price. He played some of the best, most dominant hockey of his entire career, putting the team on his back and carrying them against 3 grueling playoff rounds against heavily favored opponents. His performance was legendary, a throwback to his dominant MVP form, a final heroic stand. But what the world didn't know at the time was the incredible physical price he was paying to make that run happen. He was playing through a significant meniscus tear in his knee, an injury that required surgery almost immediately after the playoffs ended in July 2021. He had pushed his body far beyond its limits, sacrificing his own long-term health for one last shot at the ultimate prize, the Stanley Cup that had eluded him his entire career. The Canadiens ultimately lost in the final to the Tampa Bay Lightning, a heartbreaking end to a heroic but costly effort. That summer, as he recovered from the knee surgery, the cumulative weight of everything, the years of intense pressure, the chronic injuries, the painful playoff loss, and his hidden battle with substance use, finally became too much to bear. He had reached his breaking point. He knew he needed help. The man who had spent his entire career being the rock for his team, the calm presence in the eye of the storm, finally had to admit that he couldn't do it alone anymore. The fall was coming. The weight had become unbearable. The Rock of Montreal was about to crumble. But in that moment of darkness, he made the bravest save of his entire life, reaching out for help. The summer of 2021 was supposed to be a time of healing for Carey Price. After carrying the underdog Montreal Canadiens to an improbable run to the Stanley Cup final, he underwent surgery in July to repair a torn meniscus in his knee. The hope was that after a few months of rehabilitation, he would be ready to return to the net for the start of the next season, ready to once again be the cornerstone of the franchise. But the physical recovery was only half the battle. The incredible effort he had put forth during the playoffs, playing through immense pain, combined with the years of intense pressure and his hidden struggle with substance use, had pushed him to his breaking point. He knew he couldn't continue down the path he was on. He needed help, not just for his knee, but for his mind. On October 7th, 2021, just days before the start of the new NHL season, the League and the Players Association made a stunning announcement. Carey Price was voluntarily entering the NHL-NHLPA Player Assistance Program. The news sent shockwaves through the hockey world. The reason for his entry was not initially disclosed, leading to widespread speculation, but the message was clear. One of the biggest stars in the game was stepping away to deal with a personal issue. It was a courageous decision. In the hyper-masculine culture of professional hockey, asking for help, admitting vulnerability, especially regarding mental health or substance use, was still seen by many as a sign of weakness. For a player like Price, known for his stoic, unflappable demeanor, to publicly step away was a monumental act. He spent the next 30 days in the program, confronting the issues that had led him down the path of self-medication. When he emerged in November, he released a powerful and honest statement on his Instagram account, revealing the truth behind his decision. He wrote, "Over the last few years, I have let myself get to a very dark place, and I didn't have the tools to cope with that struggle. Last month, I made the decision to enter a residential treatment facility for substance use. Things had reached a point where I realized I needed to prioritize my health for both myself and my family. Asking for help when you need it is what we encourage our kids to do. And it was what I needed to do." The honesty was profound. He acknowledged the immense pressure he had faced throughout his career and how neglecting his mental health had led him to rely on substances. He took full accountability. The reaction from the hockey world was overwhelmingly supportive. Fans, players, and media praised his courage and his willingness to be vulnerable, recognizing the importance of his message. But his return to the ice was far from simple. While he had taken a massive step forward in his personal recovery, his physical recovery from the knee surgery hit major setbacks. What was initially expected to be a relatively short rehab process turned into a grueling months-long struggle. He would practice with the team, seem close to returning, only to suffer another setback that would shut him down again. The entire 2021-22 season ticked by, and the question loomed, would Carey Price ever play again? Finally, in April 2022, after nearly 10 months away from the game, he was cleared to return. His first game back was set for April 15th, a home game at the Bell Center in Montreal. The anticipation was electric. This wasn't just the return of a star player. It was the return of a city's icon, a man who had faced his demons and was making one last stand. The moment he stepped onto the ice for warm-ups, the building erupted. And when he led the team out for the start of the game, the crowd delivered one of the most emotional and sustained standing ovations in the building's history. For several minutes, the fans stood and cheered, chanting, "Carey, Carey, Carey." Price, clearly emotional, tapped his heart and raised his stick to acknowledge the incredible outpouring of love and support. It was a moment that transcended hockey, a city embracing its hero not just for his saves, but for his humanity. All right, quick timeout. Love the raw, unfiltered hockey stories? Hit that join button to become an official member of the Skates and Scars crew. Your support keeps this channel alive. And while you're down there, smash that subscribe button too. He had made it back onto the ice, bathed in the adoration of the Montreal faithful. But the final chapter of his comeback story wouldn't be written with a save, but with a speech. The handful of games Carey Price played at the end of the 2021-22 season were a testament to his sheer force of will. He was playing on a severely compromised knee, battling through pain just to get back into the net one last time for the fans who adored him. His performance in those games wasn't about statistics. It was about symbolism. It was about showing up, about finishing what he started, about facing the challenge head on, just as he had done in his personal life. After his final start, a dominant 10-2 win where he looked like his old self, he acknowledged that his future was uncertain, that his body might not allow him to continue the career he loved. But his comeback story wasn't just about playing again. It was about the journey itself. In June 2022, that journey reached its pinnacle when the Professional Hockey Writers Association honored Carey Price with the Bill Masterson Memorial Trophy, recognizing his perseverance, sportsmanship, and dedication to the game. This isn't an award for the best player, the highest scorer, or the toughest fighter. It's given annually to the one NHL player who best exemplifies the qualities of perseverance, sportsmanship, and dedication to hockey. It's the league's highest honor for character. It's an award for the player who has overcome the most significant adversity, the one who has stared into the abyss and found a way to climb back out. In the history of the award, there was perhaps no candidate more deserving than Carey Price. When his name was announced as the winner, it was a profound and emotional moment. The entire hockey world officially recognizing the immense battle he had won, not just against injury, but against the hidden demons of substance use and mental health struggles. His acceptance speech at the NHL awards ceremony was a landmark moment, not just for him, but for the entire culture of professional sports.
Such an honor for me. I'm very grateful to receive this award.
In a world known for its cliches and quiet humility, especially from a player as famously stoic as Price, he delivered a message of raw, powerful honesty. He didn't just thank his coaches and his teammates. He spoke directly to the millions of people who were still fighting the same battles he was. He acknowledged the darkness he had faced and the courage it took to ask for help. And in the most emotional moment of the speech, he looked directly at his wife Angela and their children and said, with his voice choked with emotion, "I'd like to thank my wife Angela. You've been outstanding. Your strength and support, I wouldn't be here without you." He thanked his kids for giving him the motivation to get better. It was a stunning moment of public vulnerability, raw emotion, and profound love. He was one of the toughest competitors in the NHL, a man revered as a warrior, laying his soul bare for the world to see, acknowledging his struggles and thanking the family who stood by him through his darkest days. He had reached the peak of his redemption. He was a Masterson Trophy winner. Carey Price's journey proves that the path to recovery isn't always straight, but his legacy is now secure. He will always be remembered as one of the greatest goalies in Canadiens history, a master who carried a franchise. But his story became so much bigger than hockey. He emerged as a symbol of quiet courage, a man who confronted the immense pressure and his own hidden battles, choosing to prioritize health and family. Price became a testament to the idea that true strength isn't about never falling. It's about the courage to get back up, again and again. For some, the pressure turns inward. For others, it explodes outward. Ray Emery didn't hide from chaos. He skated straight into it. Ray Emery was the underdog that the hockey world rallied behind. He played with edge, lived with passion, and made people care in a way goalies rarely do.
He's worked himself back into excellent condition, and he's ready to restart his career.
This is the rise that made him unforgettable. The journey that built the legend taken too soon. And it all began long before the NHL ever knew his name.
He's probably the first and only goalie I've ever been petrified of when I first came in the league.
Ray Emery's road didn't start with promise. It started with closed doors. At 16, he was cut from 8 junior teams in a row, each one telling him that he didn't fit, didn't belong, and wouldn't make it. For most kids, that would have been the end. For Emery, it was the beginning. A small junior C team called the Dunnville Terriers finally gave him a spot, and he turned heads by winning Rookie of the Year. Soon, the Sault Ste. Marie Greyhounds brought him into the OHL, where he built a reputation unlike any other goalie in the league. He was talented, but he was also bold, loud, and completely fearless. He challenged shooters, he chirped players, and when things got physical, he never stepped back. In his final junior season, he won the OHL Goaltender of the Year award with 33 wins. Ray Emery didn't just want to make the NHL, he wanted to kick the door open. Ottawa noticed the intensity. They drafted him 99th overall in 2001, a middle-round pick on a goalie with unusual electricity. In the AHL, he became an all-star and team MVP as a rookie. But the same aggression that made him dominant sometimes burned a little too hot. He earned multiple suspensions, including one after he retaliated against a slur. He refused to be silent. He refused to shrink. Emery competed with full emotion, and it showed. His NHL chance arrived in 2005, and he sprinted into the spotlight. With Dominik Hasek injured, Emery stepped in and won 9 straight games, setting a league record for a rookie goalie. Suddenly, the guy nobody wanted a few years ago was carrying the Ottawa Senators toward playoff success. By 2007, Emery pushed Ottawa all the way to the Stanley Cup Final, the franchise's first modern-era appearance. He became one of the most recognizable personalities in the league. Sharp reflexes, steady nerves, and an unmistakable edge made him must-watch hockey. But the moment that defined his persona came during a massive brawl against Buffalo. Emery dropped his glove, fought goalie Martin Biron, and then immediately squared up with enforcer Andrew Peters. He racked up 22 penalty minutes in one sequence and earned the nickname Sugar Ray. And yet, beneath the flash and the lights, teammates adored him. They said he lit up rooms, backed everyone up, and made even the hardest practices fun. Fans didn't just cheer for the wins, they loved the spirit of the guy who played like a heavyweight boxer. Ray Emery rose to stardom through sheer force of personality and will. And that same drive is about to lead him into a darker chapter. The first cracks appeared during the 2006-07 season, right when he was becoming a full-time starter. During a heated game against Montreal, Emery slashed Maxime Lapierre across the face during a scrum, earning a 3-game suspension. It was the first public sign that his intensity could flip from asset to liability in an instant.
I feel bad that I cost my team a goal as well, so a little mistake by me.
But the real storms came away from the rink. In early 2007, a road incident turned into national news. A 65-year-old driver claimed Emery cut him off at high speed, jumped out of his Hummer, and started making threatening gestures. Police investigated and later dropped the case, but the headlines stuck, and that was only the start. His driving habits attracted constant attention. He missed a team flight after a minor car crash. He piled up speeding tickets. His Hummer got pulled over repeatedly and was eventually impounded. The stories kept coming. One day it was a missed practice. Another day it was an argument with a teammate. Another day it was a shouting match at training. Inside the Senators' locker room, the atmosphere grew tense. Emery could still deliver strong games, but the distractions were no longer small incidents. They were patterns. But just one season later, in 2007-08, Ottawa's management had reached a breaking point. His tardiness became a talking point on sports radio. Coaches questioned his focus. And after the team's playoff exit, the Senators made a decision that sent shockwaves across the league. The Senators bought him out of his contract. He had gone from Stanley Cup finalist to free agent with no takers in a single year. The goalie who clawed his way into the NHL now had to scrap to stay in it. When no NHL team stepped forward, Emery headed overseas to the KHL, signing with the Atlant Moscow. But instead of a fresh start, his short stay in Russia only fueled the reputation of his instability. After one game, a trainer tried placing a sponsor's hat on Emery's head for a post-game ceremony. Emery snapped. Cameras caught him punching the trainer, chasing him down a hallway, and needing to be restrained. The clip went viral worldwide. His name was suddenly trending for all the wrong reasons. Media outlets labeled it an assault. Commentators wondered if his career was spiraling beyond repair. Emery was no longer seen as the favorite. He was being talked about as a problem, a risk. By 2008, he was stuck in limbo. Too talented to ignore, too volatile to trust. Everything pointed toward a harsh ending. Just when it looked like Ray Emery's career had collapsed under the weight of controversy, something far worse arrived. Not a suspension, not an argument, not a headline. Something he couldn't outskate, outpunch, or outwork. Pain. And that is where the comeback begins. In 2010, during his run with the Philadelphia Flyers, Emery began feeling something was wrong deep inside his hip. Tests revealed a diagnosis almost unheard of in hockey: a vascular necrosis, a condition that kills bone tissue from the inside out. It was the same injury that destroyed Bo Jackson's career. Doctors warned Emery that skating again might be impossible. Playing in the NHL again sounded like a fantasy. This wasn't a rivalry or a contract dispute. It was a war against his own anatomy, and the odds were ugly. The surgery he needed was brutal. Surgeons had to take bone from one part of his hip and graft it into his hip to replace dead tissue. The recovery was long, months of rehab, months of walking before skating, months of feeling like everything he had built might disappear forever. But Emery approached rehab with a different attitude than people expected. Instead of frustration, he focused on routine. Instead of complaining, he focused on progress. Day after day, he rebuilt himself piece by piece. Trainers said he pushed through drills that most athletes would quit halfway through. He was determined to earn another chance, even if that chance felt miles away. By 2011, the opportunity finally came. The Anaheim Ducks offered him a contract, and Emery stepped back onto NHL ice for the first time since the surgery. What happened next stunned the entire league. He didn't look rusty. He looked sharp, confident, steady. Emery won his first 6 starts with Anaheim. His record climbed to 7-2-0, and suddenly the Ducks were a playoff threat again. The same goalie many believed would ever return was winning games against the league's best. Writers took notice, coaches took notice, and soon the league itself recognized what he had done. Emery became a finalist for the Bill Masterson Trophy, awarded to players who show outstanding perseverance. It was the exact acknowledgement his resilience deserved. But Emery was far from finished. Later that year, the Chicago Blackhawks signed him as Corey Crawford's backup. The fit was perfect, and almost immediately, he proved it. In the 2012-13 season, he made NHL history again by starting the year 12-0-0, the best undefeated start ever recorded by a goalie. It wasn't just a comeback, it was domination. That season became a career high, a 1.94 goals against average, a 17-1-0 record, a share of the William M. Jennings Trophy with Crawford for allowing the fewest goals in the league. And then came the moment every hockey player dreams about, the Stanley Cup. When the Chicago Blackhawks won it in 2013, Ray Emery lifted the cup with both hands. The man once labeled a problem was suddenly the most loved player on the ice, smiling with the same joy he had as a teenager fighting for a roster spot. His journey had taken him from controversy to career-ending diagnosis to NHL champion. Not because he was the biggest name, not because he had the cleanest history, but because he refused to let his story end before he rewrote it. This was not a return. This was a resurrection. And yet, the final chapter of Ray Emery's life would arrive in a moment no one could prepare for. There was no spotlight, no game, no warning, just a quiet morning, a simple plan among friends, and a decision that changed everything. There was one question the hockey world couldn't shake. How did a man who survived every storm of his life lose everything in the calmest moment he'd had in years? On July 15, 2018, Emery joined a small group at the Royal Hamilton Yacht Club. It was early, calm, and warm enough that the water looked inviting. He had spent the night before catching up with friends he had known for years. The atmosphere was relaxed. Nothing suggested danger. Around dawn, Emery stepped off a boat for a short swim. He was close to shore, close to friends, and close to the spot where he had spent parts of his childhood. It was the kind of moment people take for granted, the kind that never feels risky. But within seconds, something went wrong beneath the surface. He didn't return to the side of the boat. His friends first noticed the silence, then the stillness of the water. What started as a casual swim instantly became a frantic search. Calls for help went out. Panic spread across the dock. Police and rescue teams arrived fast, launching divers into the harbors. For hours, they combed the area, but visibility was low, and the water was dark. Emery's friends waited on the pier, watching the search with faces full of disbelief. Divers finally located him about 20 yards away from where he went under. Authorities ruled out foul play, no crime, no conflict, no hidden motive. The inspector gave the official explanation: misadventure, a tragic accident. A moment where nature simply didn't bend, taking a legend far too soon. News spread across Canada in seconds. The hockey world reacted in waves. Reporters who had covered his career found themselves unable to process it. Former teammates struggled to speak. Coaches paused interviews to regain their composure. After all the storms he had lived through, it was calm water that claimed him.
So it hits the hockey world pretty hard, and we're all devastated.
People who knew him personally shared memories that had nothing to do with the rink. And this is why he was so loved. They talked about pure generosity, about the way he brought people together, about the attention he gave to anyone who crossed his path. Memories surfaced about small acts no one had heard before. Gestures that revealed how he treated people when the cameras were nowhere near him. He passed highlighting something deeper. Emery had spent years rebuilding his life, finding steadiness, and crafting a new version of himself. He wasn't at a crossroads anymore. He was settled, grounded, and looking forward. Losing the most loved goalie in the league at just 35 didn't just hurt, it felt like he was taken way too soon. Organizations he once played for released statements with careful, heavy wording. Ottawa spoke of gratitude for the years he gave them. Chicago remembered the championship run and the presence he brought into their room. Former teammates posted messages filled with stories that only insiders would know. The kind of memories that showed how much space he held in their world. His story closes with loss, but it also leaves a mark that can't fade. Not because of what he achieved, but because of the way his journey shifted at every turn. There was no single version of him. He reinvented himself multiple times, rising and falling and rising again. His end came without a signal, but the life he lived will always stand on its own. Ray Emery showed what happens when emotion runs unchecked. Ron Hextall showed what happens when anger is controlled. Most goalies are the hunted. Ron Hextall was the hunter.
And I didn't even hit him actually, but I just tried to punch him.
He broke the record for goalie penalties. He swung his stick, chased players, terrified the league.
But obviously it was a mistake.
They called him a psychopath, and he was just getting started. But here's the twist. This chaos somehow led him to the Stanley Cup. How does that even happen?
We don't have to sit here that long to realize what a sharp guy he is, and how he carries himself and how he cares about.
Ron Hextall was born in 1964, and he was born into a hockey dynasty. The game was in his blood. His grandfather, Brian Hextall Sr., was a New York Rangers legend and a Hockey Hall of Famer. His father, Brian Hextall Jr., was a tough-as-nails NHL forward. His uncle, Dennis Hextall, was also a longtime NHL player. Ron grew up in NHL locker rooms, watching men who played the game the hard way. And what he saw in those years would come back later in a way no one expected. The Broad Street Bullies, as they were known, were the most feared, violent, and hated team in hockey. Ron would watch as a kid as the Flyers roughed up his dad and uncle. He later admitted that as a kid, he hated the Flyers for what they did to his family. In a perfect piece of dark irony, that same kid became the most famous Flyer of his generation. Not by escaping that violence, but by carrying it forward. Ron Hextall played hockey, but he was never seen as a blue-chip prospect. He was a late-round draft pick, selected 119th overall in 1982 by the very team he used to hate, the Philadelphia Flyers. But before he could even think about the NHL, he was sent to play junior hockey for the Brandon Wheat Kings. And this is where the first warning sign appeared. This is where the league realized Hextall was different. Goaltenders by nature are supposed to be calm, focused, and passive. Hextall was none of those things. He was a 6'3" menace who viewed the entire defensive zone as his personal territory. He didn't just use his goalie stick to deflect pucks, he used it to slash, chop, and punish any player who dared to skate too close. In the final season of junior hockey, he did something that still echoes. He set a record. It wasn't a record for save percentage. It wasn't a record for shutouts. Ron Hextall set the all-time WHL record for the most penalty minutes by a goaltender in a single season with 117. To put that in perspective, many goalies go their entire careers with less than 20. Hextall had 117 in 1 year. This was such an insane number, so far outside of normal, that it served as a declaration. This player wasn't just wired different. This was a psychopath on skates. A man who seemed to care as much about hurting people as he did about stopping the puck. But that was just the appetizer. The real madness was still waiting for him in the pros. After his junior career, the Flyers assigned him to their AHL affiliate, the Hershey Bears. It was here that the Hextall paradox began to take shape. He wasn't just a goon, he was a phenomenal goalie. In his first full pro season, he played 53 games and won 30 of them. He was so good that he was named the AHL's Outstanding Rookie, winning the Dudley Red Garrett Memorial Award. He was, by all accounts, the best new goalie in the league. But the psychopath was still there. In a heated conference final game, a massive bench-clearing brawl erupted. Every player from both teams spilled onto the ice. He saw the brawl and skated straight out of his crease. He wasn't defending himself, he was hunting. He charged into the chaos and grabbed the first player he could find. When that fight ended, he went looking for another, and then another. By the time the refs finally restored order, Ron Hextall had fought 3 different players in one brawl. And this was the man the Philadelphia Flyers were about to call up. A winner. The AHL's Rookie of the Year, and a certified madman. A goalie who had just proved he was willing to fight an entire team by himself. The NHL had no idea what was coming. He arrived at the Flyers training camp in 1986 as a long shot. A kid fresh out of the minors with a wild reputation. He wasn't supposed to be the star. He wasn't supposed to be the guy, but he won the job. And then he didn't just play, he took over. As a rookie, he played in 66 games, a massive workload. He won 37 of them, proving he was a true #1 goalie. He was so dominant, so clearly better than everyone else, that he won the Vezina Trophy as the NHL's best goaltender. But he was just getting started. The playoffs began, and this is where the hero side of his story was written. Hextall became a brick wall. He was a man possessed, leading his underdog Flyers team on a long, brutal, magical run. They beat team after team, shocking the league. They made it all the way to the Stanley Cup Final. Their opponent, the 1980s Edmonton Oilers. This wasn't just a team, it was the team. A dynasty, the greatest offensive machine ever built, led by Wayne Gretzky and Mark Messier. The Flyers were given no chance, but they had Ron Hextall. He was spectacular. He put the entire team on his back and dragged them into the fight. The series went all the way to a deciding Game 7. In the end, the Oilers' firepower was just too much, and the Flyers lost. They were heartbroken. But then, something happened that almost never happens in sports. When the series was over, the league had to give out the Conn Smythe Trophy, the award for the most valuable player of the entire playoffs. They didn't give it to Gretzky, they didn't give it to an Oiler, they gave it to Ron Hextall. He had been so good, so dominant, clearly the best player on the ice for 2 straight months, that they gave him the MVP award even though he was on the losing team. This is an honor reserved for a tiny handful of legends. It was the ultimate sign of respect. Even the great Wayne Gretzky was in awe. During that series, Gretzky told the press that Ron Hextall was, quote, probably the best goaltender I've ever played against in the NHL. A rookie, the Vezina winner, the Conn Smythe winner, a hero praised by the greatest player of all time, but he was also a psychopath. And during that exact same playoff run, he showed the world his dark side. It was Game 4 of the Stanley Cup Final, the biggest stage of his life. An Oilers player, Glenn Anderson, skated by and gave Hextall a cheap shot with his stick. The referee didn't call a penalty. Ron Hextall snapped. A normal goalie would have yelled at the ref. A normal goalie would have moved on to the next save. Hextall wasn't normal. He didn't forget. He went hunting. A few minutes later, another Oiler, Kent Nielsen, went skating near the net. Nielsen hadn't done anything. He was just in the wrong place at the wrong time. Hextall didn't care. He just saw an Oilers jersey. He held his goalie stick with two hands like a baseball bat, and he swung it as hard as he could, chopping Nielsen directly on the back of his legs. It was a violent, vicious attack. Nielsen collapsed to the ice. The crowd was stunned. Hextall was given a major penalty. After the series, the NHL suspended him for the first 8 games of the next season.
No question about when it got to the point where I felt they're doing it, I guess I'm gonna have to do something.
This was the psychopath moment. And the scariest part was what he said after. He wasn't sorry for the attack. He was sorry it was Nielsen and not Anderson. He was openly admitting he was mad that he had slashed the wrong guy. He told the media, if somebody slaps you in the face, you're going to slap him back. The league's discipline boss was furious. He said there was no justification for any player to swing his stick in retaliation, especially a goalie stick that could cause serious injury. But Ron Hextall didn't care about the league's rules. He had his own. He had just won the Vezina and the Conn Smythe as a rookie, a certified superstar. For most players, that kind of season makes you protect your status, play safer, clean up the edges. Hextall doubled down on the chaos. In his rookie year, he stunned the league with 104 penalty minutes. People said it was a fluke. It wasn't. In his second season, he hit 104 penalty minutes again. Then came the 1988-89 season. This is when he made history. He got 113 penalty minutes. This is still the all-time NHL record for a goalie. But here's the twist nobody saw coming. Behind all the fury, Hextall had a weapon no goalie had ever brought to the game. He could shoot the puck and score. He was a great puck handler, almost like a third defenseman. He had talked for over a year about wanting to score. Then on December 8th, 1987, the Boston Bruins pulled their goalie. The net was empty. Hextall got the puck, looked up, and fired it all the way down the ice. It went right in. He became the first goalie in NHL history to score a goal by shooting the puck himself. And just to prove it wasn't a lucky shot, he did it again on April 11th, 1989. This time in a high-pressure playoff game against Washington. He is the only goalie in history to score 2 goals. A goalie who can stop you, score on you, and fight you. That's who Ron Hextall was. Unpredictable, dangerous, completely uncontained. In 1987, Hextall was picked to play for Team Canada, an honor reserved for the best players in the world. He was the backup goalie. During a simple Team Canada practice, Sylvain Turgeon wandered too close to Hextall's net. That was all it took. Hextall lashed out with his goalie stick, cracking Turgeon's arm and knocking him out of the tournament before it even started. But the worst was still coming. The 1989 playoffs. The moment the psychopath truly surfaced. The Flyers were locked in a brutal series against Pittsburgh. And in Game 5, everything unraveled. Hextall was getting shelled. The Penguins put up 10 goals. He was pulled from the net, put back in, then yanked again. You could see it boiling in him. And then he snapped. He took off after Rob Brown, chasing him around the ice, desperate to fight. When a referee tried to intervene, Hextall shoved him aside. It was chaos. And somehow, the moment that defined him still hadn't happened yet. After the game, everyone said he was out of control. Hextall's response was chilling. If I were as out of control as people say I am, I wouldn't be in the National Hockey League. He truly believed his anger was normal. The Penguins coach said it best. He called Hextall the extreme example of controlled violence. He said the Flyers live and die with it. Hextall's anger was a tool, but it was also a bomb. The Flyers won that series and moved on to face the Montreal Canadiens. And in Game 1, everything detonated. Chris Chelios caught Brian Popp with a flying elbow, a brutal hit that knocked him out of the series. The Flyers were furious. Hextall took it personally. He didn't explode right away, he just waited. Game 2, Game 3, Game 4, Game 5, and now Game 6. The Flyers on the brink of elimination. With the season slipping away, Hextall finally saw Chelios on the ice. And that was it. He abandoned his crease, leaving the net wide open, and tore down the ice. He wasn't tracking the puck, he wasn't thinking about the game, he was locked on to one target. Ron Hextall exploded into Chelios, unleashing a barrage of punches. It was calculated revenge. Hextall later said he did it for his teammate Brian Propp, but the league didn't care about the motive. They had finally reached their breaking point. The NHL hit Hextall with a 12-game suspension, the longest of his career. It was the moment everything shifted. The fines, the penalties, the fury, it had all finally caught up to him. His hyper-aggressive style started to tear his body apart. A Flyers doctor warned that his style made him more likely to get hurt, and he was right. He was hit with a string of injuries. His groin, his hamstring. He was constantly on the trainer's table, missing more and more games. But the trouble wasn't just physical. He still couldn't control the psychopath. He got suspended again, this time for 6 games after slashing a player in a preseason game. He couldn't even make it to the regular season without attacking someone. The hero was becoming a problem. And in the summer of 1992, the Flyers had enough. They traded him. He was dumped as part of the monster deal for Eric Lindros and sent to the Quebec Nordiques. Hextall was reportedly scared to death to move. He played well in Quebec, but they didn't keep him long. A year later, they traded him again, this time to the New York Islanders. He was on his 3rd team in 3 years. The fans in New York booed him. This was his low point. Then, in 1994, the Flyers made a trade to get him back. Ron Hextall was coming home, but he wasn't the same man. This was the new Hextall, the mature Hextall. The psychopath was still in there, but he had learned to chain it up, and he became a better goalie than ever. In the 1995-96 season, he had the best goals against average in the entire NHL. He was no longer the crazy kid. He was the smart, calm leader. He was so good that he led the Flyers back to the Stanley Cup final in 1997. They lost the series, but Hextall had proved his point. He had changed. He played his last game in 1999, retiring as a Flyers hero, setting team records for games played and wins. But there was one glaring hole in his story. He never won the Stanley Cup. He lost in the final 2 times. The one thing he wanted most, he never got. This is where the story takes its last turn. Ron Hextall did not leave hockey. He just left the ice. He put on a suit and tie. He started working as a scout, then he took a job with the Los Angeles Kings as their assistant general manager. And in 2012, the Los Angeles Kings won the Stanley Cup. Ron Hextall, the executive, was a Stanley Cup champion. His name was finally carved into the trophy. The madman who had set records for fighting had to stop playing, put on a suit, and become a boss to finally get his hands on the cup. But not every goalie breaks. Some are shaped by doubt. Some grow from being overlooked. Pekka Rinne was never supposed to be here. He was the lanky kid who almost quit after a growth spurt left him uncoordinated. Passed over 3 times before finally going 258th overall. But that so-called Mr. Irrelevant became the NHL's Vezina winner.
And the Vezina trophy goes to Pekka Rinne.
This is Pekka Rinne's rise from overlooked to unstoppable. In professional sports, there's a nickname given to the very last player chosen in the draft, Mr. Irrelevant. It's a label, half joke and half brutal reality for the player no one expects to succeed. In the 2004 NHL entry draft, the hockey world found its own Mr. Irrelevant 33 spots away from being the absolute last man taken. His name was Pekka Rinne. The draft that year had 291 total picks. Pekka Rinne's name was finally called at 258th overall, deep in the 8th round. Rinne, born in 1982 in Kempala, Finland, was already ancient by NHL draft standards. He wasn't a fresh-faced 18-year-old prodigy. He was 21. He had been eligible for the draft in 2001, 2002, and 2003. For 3 consecutive years, every single one of the 30 NHL teams had looked at his name, analyzed his potential, and decided, no thanks. He was passed over, forgotten, and written off. In the eyes of the scouting world, he was a non-entity. He was too old to be a prospect, too raw to be a project, and worst of all, he was buried on his own team's bench in Finland. On draft day in June 2004, he wasn't sitting by the phone. He wasn't nervously watching the broadcast with his family. He was at a traditional Finnish midsummer party with his friends, completely disconnected from the event. He'd already been overlooked so many times that he wasn't even following it. The call finally came, shattering the party's atmosphere. It was his agent telling him the impossible had happened. The Nashville Predators had just used an 8th-round pick on him. Rinne was, in his own words, completely shocked. This was the profile of a ghost pick, a player with no buzz, no hype, and no future. But why? Why was this 6'5" athlete completely invisible to the entire league? The answer lay in his past, in a decision he made as a teenager that almost ended his career before it ever began. Years earlier, around age 15, Rinne hit a massive awkward growth spurt. He shot up in height, but his coordination didn't follow. He was clumsy, unbalanced, and lost on the ice. He felt like a giraffe on skates. His words for how awkward that growth spurt made him feel, and he almost quit for a summer. The game that had become natural became a frustrating daily struggle. He got so demoralized, so fed up with his own body, that he went to his father and said he was done. He quit. He walked away from the rink and skipped an entire summer of hockey. But the itch came back. The time away didn't kill his love for the game, it clarified it. He returned the next season, not with new talent, but with a new relentless drive. He had learned a lesson that would define him. Resilience, not just raw talent, would have to be his path forward. That resilience, however, didn't make him a star. When he turned pro in Finland, he was stuck. He played for Oulun Kärpät, his hometown club, but he wasn't the starter. He was the backup to Niklas Backstrom, another goalie who was a hot prospect, a player who would go on to have his own star career with the Minnesota Wild. This is why Rinne was a ghost to the scouts. When they came to watch Kärpät play, they saw Backstrom in the net. They saw Rinne sitting on the bench, opening the door. But he did exist to one man. Pekka Rinne's entire career, the Vezina, the statue, all of it, exists because a single scout refused to ignore what everyone else had missed. Jana Kekalainen, Nashville's European scout, was watching Kärpät, but his eyes kept drifting to the backup. He was forced to judge Rinne almost entirely based on pregame warm-ups and practices. In those brief stolen moments, while other scouts focused on the game, Kekalainen saw something no one else did. He saw the 6'5" frame, but he also saw the extraordinary, almost unnatural reflexes. He saw the giraffe on skates had grown into his body, becoming a massive athlete who moved with shocking speed and poise. He saw a hidden gem. Kekalainen went back to Nashville's front office and pounded the table. He was putting his reputation on the line for a 21-year-old overaged backup who had been passed over 3 times. But he was convincing. He persuaded them to use a late-round flyer, a pick so late it barely mattered, on the kid no one else wanted. Then assistant general manager Paul Fenton later admitted what a profound evaluation it was, saying it was quite apparent that he would be our goaltender of the future. The rest of the league saw an irrelevant, forgettable name at the bottom of the draft list. But that one scout's belief had just turned an 8th-round gamble into a franchise cornerstone. The longest shot imaginable was now in the system, but the real work, the long, slow grind from Mr. Irrelevant to NHL ready, was just about to begin. That single scout's belief had given him a number, but it didn't give him a spot in the NHL. His journey was just beginning, and it wouldn't start in the bright lights of the big leagues. It would start in the grueling, unglamorous world of the minor leagues. In 2005, Pekka Rinne packed his bags and moved to North America. He was assigned to the Nashville Predators' AHL affiliate, the Milwaukee Admirals. For a young player from Finland, this was a new world. The language was different, the culture was different, and the hockey was completely different. The American Hockey League is a tough, punishing league. It's a place filled with veterans trying to hang on and young, hungry prospects trying to claw their way up. It's a league of long bus rides and small arenas, a world away from the chartered jets and sold-out arenas of the NHL. More importantly, the game itself was different. The rinks in North America are smaller than in Europe. This means the game is faster, the angles are tighter, players shoot the puck quickly, and the play is more physical. For a tall, acrobatic goalie like Rinne, it was a massive adjustment. He had to relearn his position, adapting his style to a game that came at him with more speed and less space than he had ever seen. This was the start of the slow burn. The Predators didn't rush him. They sent him to Milwaukee to learn, to adapt, and to prove that he was more than just a warm-up legend. He arrived as an unknown 8th-round pick. He started as a backup, once again fighting for his job. But just as he did as a teenager, his relentless drive took over. He quickly earned the starting job, and in his very first season, he did something shocking. As a rookie in the 2005-06 season, Rinne didn't just survive, he dominated. He put the Admirals on his back and carried them game after game all the way to the Calder Cup final, the AHL's championship series. It was a stunning performance. The ghost pick was suddenly the best goalie in the league. But even that wasn't enough. One great AHL season didn't punch his ticket to the NHL. The Predators' front office, while impressed, wanted to see more. They wanted to be absolutely sure. So Rinne stayed in Milwaukee. He spent a second full season with the Admirals and then a third. 3 full years. While other higher drafted goalies were getting their chances in the NHL, Pekka Rinne was still paying his dues. He became a 2-time AHL All-Star. He was a known force in the minors, a player who was clearly too good for the league he was in. But the call-up to the show, the one he was working for, still didn't come. He was stuck in his apprenticeship. Finally, after 3 long years of grinding, learning, and dominating, the door opened. Rinne, now 26 years old, was called up to the NHL for good. But Pekka Rinne was just getting started. The kid who was passed over 3 times, the giraffe on skates who almost quit, the 8th-round Mr. Irrelevant who spent 3 years in the minors, he had finally arrived. And he didn't just scrape by, he exploded onto the scene. He quickly seized the starting job in Nashville, proving he wasn't just an AHL All-Star, he was an elite NHL goaltender. By 2013, he was one of the best in the world, the undisputed backbone of the Predators. He had made it. The climb was over. And then, in an instant, it all came crashing down. By 2013, Pekka Rinne was no longer a secret. He was one of the NHL's elites. He was a Vezina Trophy finalist, a player known for his incredible 6'5" size and his shocking acrobatic flexibility. He had proven everyone wrong. His long-term high-value contract proved he was the cornerstone of the Predators. Then came May 2013. At the end of the season, Rinne underwent what was supposed to be a routine arthroscopic hip surgery. It was a minor tune-up, a common procedure for a high-performance athlete to clean out the joints. He was expected to recover, rehab, and be 100% ready for the next season. 5 months later, the nightmare began. In October, after the new season had just started, Rinne began to feel sick. He developed a severe fever. Something was terribly wrong. Doctors ran tests, and what they found was catastrophic. He had a severe E. coli infection. But it wasn't just in his system. It was deep inside the repaired hip joint. This wasn't a minor setback. It was a life-altering, career-ending threat. The aggressive bacteria were eroding the hip socket. The very joint that allowed him to make his explosive split-second saves was being eaten away. Rinne himself called the situation very dangerous. He was rushed into emergency surgery. Doctors had to go back into the hip, open it up, and desperately try to clean out the aggressive infection before it did permanent, irreversible damage. But the fight was just beginning. For 4 agonizing weeks after the surgery, Rinne was sidelined. He had to have an IV inserted into his arm, feeding him a constant, powerful stream of antibiotics just to fight off the bacteria that were trying to destroy his joint. The hockey world watched and waited. Speculation was grim. He missed 51 games, almost the entire 2013-14 season. For a goalie whose entire style was built on flexibility and explosive power, a deteriorating hip was a death sentence. Many feared he would never play again. And even if he did, there was no way he could return as the same elite athletic goalie. He was 31 years old, recovering from a devastating joint-altering infection. The kid who was once irrelevant, the man who had climbed the mountain and reached the top, was now at the very bottom. His hard-earned career looked like it was over. He was facing a second climb, this one even more impossible than the first. Rinne's comeback wasn't just about healing. It was about proving all over again that he belonged. He returned to the ice for the 2014-15 season, but the hockey world was watching with doubt. Could he still be the same goalie? Could he still make those explosive athletic saves after his hip was nearly destroyed? He answered them with one of the best seasons of his career. He didn't just play, he was dominant. He posted MVP caliber numbers, single-handedly winning games for Nashville. He proved that he had not only recovered, but that he was still one of the best in the world. The climb back was about more than just his health. It was about reaching the one peak that had always eluded him. The Vezina Trophy, the award for the league's best goaltender. This was a core part of his story. It was a story of constant, frustrating denial. Even before his injury, he had been at the very top, only to be told, not yet. In 2011, he was a finalist for both the Vezina and the Hart Trophy as league MVP, but he lost to Tim Thomas. The very next year, in 2012, he was a finalist again. This time, he lost to Henrik Lundqvist. He was always the bridesmaid, never the bride. Now, after his incredible comeback from the infection, he was a finalist for a third time. The 2014-15 season was his redemption story. It was the perfect narrative. The man who beat a career-ending infection returns to finally claim his crown. But the voters disagreed. For the third time, he was snubbed, losing the award to Carey Price. He was 32 years old. He had been a finalist 3 times. He had been denied before his injury, and he was denied after it. It seemed destined that his name would never be on that trophy. The Mr. Irrelevant pick was just not meant to be the best. For many players, this would be the final chapter. The long climb, the terrible injury, the failed comeback, it would be the end. But Pekka Rinne just kept working. The 2015-16 season passed. Then, in 2016-17, he carried his team on a miracle run to the Stanley Cup Final. And then came the 2017-18 season. At 35 years old, an age when most goalies are in sharp, undeniable decline, Pekka Rinne delivered the single greatest season of his life. It was a masterpiece of resilience. He wasn't just good, he was a brick wall. He was the unquestioned leader and backbone of the Predators. Night after night, he was the best player on the ice. He went 42-13-4, posted 8 shutouts, and had a stunning .927 save percentage. He wasn't just putting up stats, he was winning. From February 19th to March 19th, the Predators went on a franchise record 11-game winning streak, and Rinne was the anchor for nearly every single victory. He was so good that he dragged the entire franchise to new heights, leading the Nashville Predators to their first ever President's Trophy for the best regular season record in the entire NHL. He was 35 years old, and he was, without any doubt, the best. This time, he was undeniable. That spring, the NHL hockey world finally gave him his due. The long, impossible climb was over. The kid who was passed over 3 times, the 8th-round pick, the minor league grinder, the man who came back from a hip-eating infection, was finally called to the stage. Pekka Rinne was handed the Vezina Trophy. He stood on stage, emotional, holding the award that had eluded him for a decade. He thanked his childhood idols, legends like Brodeur, Roy, and Hasek, and called the award humbling beyond words. The journey was complete. The once irrelevant backup from Kempele, the 258th pick who wasn't even watching the draft, was now on the same trophy as the very legends whose posters used to hang on his wall. Rinne retired as a franchise icon, one of the most beloved players in Nashville history. He was the very first player in the team's history to have his number, 35, retired and hung from the rafters. A bronze statue of him now stands outside the arena, a permanent monument to the man who built the franchise. He holds the all-time record for the most wins by any Finnish-born goalie in the history of the NHL. He even did the impossible for a goalie. On January 9th, 2020, he scored a goal, joining a tiny club of only 12 goalies in NHL history to do so. His journey from midsummer anonymity in Finland to a Vezina in Nashville rewrote what it means to be a late-round pick. He wasn't Mr. Irrelevant, he was Mr. Inevitable. He was the giraffe on skates who almost quit. An 8th-round afterthought who battled rejection, infection, and came back stronger. He proved resilience will always beat raw talent. Drop your thoughts down below. Who's your favorite underdog story? Every grinder gets one big moment, and if you liked this one, hit subscribe. And if you really want to back the boys, hit join and support the channel. It keeps the lights on, the mics hot, and the stories rolling. We'll save you a stall in the locker room. Just try not to wheel in Crocs, you absolute beaut.